We've all debated at one point in our lives, whether it's online or in the real world, about many different things in our lives. Whether it could be something as simple as which movies are better, like Star Wars or Indiana Jones, or maybe something a little bit more complex and involves a little bit more of a deep dive, like which presidential candidate should be the next president of the United States, or maybe something as very simplistic as what is better, cats or dogs? Which, by the way, dogs are definitely better, but I will agree, cats are funnier. Basically, the whole idea of debating is just part of our human mind and psychology nowadays, that to kind of just have the argument of something is pretty second nature for many of us. We're very passionate people. We as a society can be very passionate about certain things in our lives, whether certain hobbies, certain, events in history, or just anything in general, like I've mentioned. But where exactly did all this even come from? Like, when did we start debating, and why is it something that's so important to us nowadays? So before diving into the history of debating, we also have to define it, because we can't talk about something we honestly don't even know what it is. So debating is sort of like the art, the skill set, the ability to essentially have an argument against someone, or to present a stance and to let a conversation flow from one another who is in opposite ends of the spectrum. Essentially, or at least according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary here, debating is to argue, but it's to argue in a more professional manner, or in a manner that allows a conversation to take place. And that's sort of like the beauty of debating. We kind of lost a little bit that art nowadays, because online it is a little bit hard to sort of like let your ideas flow without so much getting sort of like a backlash in an instant, because everybody's so connected and things like that. But the art of debating itself is just something that's so human when you think about it, in a sense of like, we can have conversations about something that we love or something that we're aware of, but we can have different opinions about it, and we can come to some sort of middle ground at the end of it. But as much as I do want to have a conversation about the art of debating and why I think it's healthy to debate and why I think it's important to debate and things like that, obviously we're talking about the history of debating. So now that we defined the term of debate, well, where exactly did it even come from? Now, with that in mind, let me take you back in the history books, or let's time travel here for a second to ancient Greece, where for quite some time the ancient Greeks were pretty cool in terms of handling their own empire. In fact, they were the ones that gave us the idea of a democracy, or a republic, if you will. Although we could argue the republic aspect could be from the Roman Empire a couple of hundred years afterwards, but the construct of the ancient Greek empire, the ancient Greek philosophy, was all about democratic principles. It was all about democracy, about the people. What would the people want for us to thrive as a society? And although we can argue that we had the Spartans for military purposes, and there were a lot of things that makes the ancient world, well, the ancient world, ancient Greece just demonstrated that if we allow a public space to formulate and to cultivate so many ideas and philosophies from other people, surely we can survive as an empire, as a civilization, and we can kind of advance our technologies, our way of life, our philosophies, just simply the human structure, and kind of just go from there. Whatever I'm trying to say there, at least. And so from there, the ancient Greeks created something called a forum. Now, a forum that we know today, usually during the early days of the internet and things like that, it was like a discussion place on old websites where you can have chat and conversations about certain things that you love and things like that. So though that we kind of know what a forum is, but the forum in ancient Greece was this public square, this public place where everybody would just join in and have a conversation about something. Like, for example, if there was a marketplace nearby, a person would be like, oh, what's the majesty of a banana or a fruit or whatever it is that they saw in like that observation. And then the next person would jump in and be like, that's not a banana, that's an orange. And from there, they just had a public exchange of ideas and communication. And that's where most of the democratic principles that ancient Greece was sort of cultivating at the time, that's where it was all presented. Again, that public space of allowing people to exchange ideas and let their mind flow and see what observations are all about, whether it's from the ancient Greek gods or whether or not, again, that is a banana or not. All of that happened in a forum. And also, to go back to Roman Empire, there we also had something called an agora, but we'll talk more about that in the near future. Okay, yeah, honestly, I don't know what happened to me at that last part there, but hey, I'm just very passionate to talk about debating, alright? So anyway, let's just move on, alright? But of course, the idea of a forum, allowing all these exchanges of ideas and communication to be flow from person to person, that's truly incredible. But at some point, someone had to stand their ground and say, all right, we need to make sure that in order to strive as a society, in order to improve as this amazing civilization that we've created for ourselves, we need to contest against each other and see whether or not which ideas truly would work to benefit our society. And that is where the mighty Socrates, one of the most famous, and I really mean by famous, of ancient Greek philosophers, stepped up to the plate and said, let's start debating, folks, and I know just how to debate. Now, the way that Socrates invented the art of debate is something that's pretty simple in its execution, but something we often don't really do nowadays because we're constantly against each other and trying to prove that we're right, rather than trying to find the middle ground itself. And this is where Socrates invented the infamous Socratic method. Now, the Socratic method, I know, trust me, if you're in high school or you're in college, I totally understand you do not want to hear about this type of debate method, but if it weren't for Socrates of inventing that method, we honestly wouldn't even have the idea of debating in the first place. Now, of course, a lot of you out there don't even know what a Socratic method is, and thankfully I'm here to explain a little bit more about that. So the Socratic method, and it's something that I've used in my fair share of college and high school. In fact, it wasn't in my junior year that I learned a little bit about the Socratic method and how to apply it in my day-to-day life in terms of having discussions and debate with people. But the whole concept of what Socrates was doing with this method was really to ask one question to a group of people and let them answer the question. Now, it sounds pretty simple in its execution, like I've said, but it's a lot more complicated because it actually allows the ability to think and have that critical analysis of either yourself, depending on how the question is inflected, or just around about the world around you. And this allows that exchange of ideas, like I said, and also that art of debate to come through, because one person may have this observation about something and another person may have a different observation about something, and then they kind of have to not argue but have a discussion and that debate against each other as to whether or not what they think is right, or if there is a third opinion from that question. And that right there is where we get the art of debate. And from there is where the Socratic method opens up so many doors and so many opportunities to elevate the playing field of what debate is really all about. And to further give examples of that elevated playing field that Socrates managed to create with the art and skill of debating with his own method, we see Cicero in 63 BCE doing similar pursuits in the Roman Empire. The Enlightenment period itself was basically founded with those principles in mind, and further asking questions and allowing debate and discussion to unfold from scientific research to philosophical pursuits and endeavors to even enhancing religious studies and implementing that onto scientific research and philosophical debate. All of that was just incredible to see, and it was all done under one guy who simply just asked a bunch of questions to random people in the forum and see what their observations and their ideas were like, and to further enhance the quality of life of their own civilizations. That right there is the peak perfection of what makes debate super important and super special in terms of our own human history. The ideas of liberty, pursuit of happiness, wealth, education, all of that is confounded within those principles of debate. And again, it's something that can be super applicable even today, as presidential candidates as of recent have had their debates go on to showcase their ideas of how they want to improve the American civilization and American society and their economy and things like that. We've seen it, and just in general, like I said, in the education system that allows a sense of critical thinking and analysis, and even asking questions from person to person to see what their thoughts are on a certain topic. For example, if Frankenstein really is the monster of sort of that literary book, or if Shakespeare really was the guy that made the sonnets and things like that, just to give examples more or less of how the Socratic seminar kind of puts the idea and perspective in place. But bottom line, If it's not for debate, then we wouldn't even have the exchange of information to be how it is today, and that's something that we really need to stress in our modern society. With the art of debate, with the history of debate, and just knowing that had it not been for the ancient Greeks and allowing their ability to exchange this sense of information and communication and naturally trickle it down to today in 2023, and just allowing the internet to really exchange with these ideas and these concepts and these sort of levels of communication to flow, while also having these healthy discussions and debates, had it not been for the Greeks and their ability to see what makes a democracy, or at the very least, what makes us human and how we observe the world around us, had it not been for them, then everything that we know about human history as a whole, about every single civilization up until this point, really would never exist had we not simply asked ourselves, what if we see the world differently? And so then now that we know everything that we know more or less about the history of debate and the art of it and things like that, it's important that we all try to hone in on those skills of debate. In fact, debate and discussion go hand in hand, and it's important to ask questions each and every day. It's important to get involved with every other person out there, whether it's from your own hobbies, your own mediums, your own careers, and have sort of like these healthy discussions and conversations about what is it that makes you think this way about a certain job or a certain career or a certain opportunity, and why is it that I think this way about it. And if we have those exchanges of ideas and that contention of allowing those ideas to kind of have that conflict against each other, but also find that middle ground like I mentioned, then that's how we are able to advance and how to further create conversations and to build each other up. Because once we see what the other side thinks and we acknowledge it, but we also want them to see our side, then this allows a healthy sort of relationship between people, as we truly realize how different we are from person to person and how unique our individual attributes are and how amazing it is to be just us and how we observe the world. And so with that, I leave you all to it. I'll see you all with that next one. There's a bunch of other cool videos for you to watch as well. I got my thoughts on AI as one of them, and maybe if you want to learn a bit more about Leonardo da Vinci or maybe about the Mona Lisa, you'll probably want to click on that one as well. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this as well. And I'll see you all with some really cool topics and conversations. So peace out and see you with that next one.